Hello everyone, my name is Holger and this is the second update to my 6-part video series that previews the upcoming Season 2 of the Wheel of Time TV show. If you have not watched the earlier videos yet, then I strongly recommend you do so first. The link to the playlist should be at the top of your screen. I did not expect to release another video before Season 2 is released, but so much new information has become available since the last update, including the trailer, as well as cast interviews, that I now feel an update is necessary. Some predictions need to be changed a little, but we're also getting first hints that some of my predictions appear to be correct. But first a spoiler warning. This video does contain spoilers. I recommend that before watching this video, you watch the first season of the TV show and read all of the books first, up until book 14, A Memory of Light, plus the prequel New Spring, in order to avoid having your reading enjoyment spoiled. The first interesting piece of information is a reference to a village called Atuan's Mill. We hear about this from two sources, first from a description in the picture of a costume, and then again mentioned by Daniel Henney, the actor playing Lan, in an interview by the Movie Podcast. In the books, Atuan's Mill is a village on Tormund Head, some distance away from Falme, and I think the show uses the name for the same purpose. Atuan's Mill appears to be the name of the village Giki Eri described as a river village in her Season 2 location video, and it explains why a village near a river was chosen, because the water wheel apparently powers the mill from which the village gets its name. This seems to be the place where Perrin's group is captured, is engaged in fighting, and encounters the Sanche. Knowing about this village and its location simplifies the storyline a little bit. I previously thought that Perrin might be caught trying to enter Falme, and that the river village is part of Falme, or a small village very close to Falme. However, with Atuan's Mill being some distance away, the sequence of events becomes a bit more streamlined, somewhat like this. Baron Fane arrives to the jungle Waygate and goes to Falme. Egwene arrives to the jungle Waygate, is captured, and then taken to a Damani kennel in Falme. Perrin's group arrives to the jungle Waygate, is attacked by Damani, and then captured and held in an outdoor prison camp. After a mid-season time jump, Suroth comes to Atuan's Mill, parading Egwene with her. Perrin recognizes Egwene and decides to attempt an escape in order to free Egwene while she's in Atuan's Mill. Perrin escapes, unites with the Aiel, and frees Egwene. The group continues on toward Falme, and outside of the city unites with Rand's group, who arrives by portal stone. From that point on, the events continue as previously predicted. Unfortunately, this new information also has some bad news embedded in it. I previously predicted that Uno would survive at least his captivity by the Sanche. That was based on the fact that we see him fight the Sanche here during the night, and that we have other nighttime clips of fighting with people apparently in their underwear and without weapon and armor, suggesting that this fight takes place during the escape attempt. However, in the trailer we now have this additional clip with Damani attacking Perrin's group while they're still wearing uniforms. This means this particular fight sequence has to be from the time when they're captured, not during the escape. So it looks like there are two separate nighttime fights in this village, one in which Perrin's group is captured, and another one when they escape. So the question now is which of these two fights the clip with Uno belongs to. It is probably from when they're captured, for two reasons. First, because Uno still has his shield and sword here, and second, because we later see a person on the ground who appears to be dead, or at least unconscious. This person is very likely Uno. He is clearly lying on his back, based on the position of feet and knees, and the beard on this person looks very similar to Uno's beard. Here's another hint that this is Uno. In this clip, everyone appears to have been stripped of their uniforms, except for Uno, who is being pushed to the ground. And then later we see, again, exactly one person who's still wearing uniform, lying on the ground. They have to be the same person. So where's the evidence that Uno is dead in this scene, and not just unconscious? We don't have hard evidence, but here's what I think happens. After Perrin's group is captured, everyone is ordered to strip, but Uno refuses, and he's then pushed to his knees, and when he still refuses, he is killed and left lying on the ground, still in his uniform. By leaving Uno on the ground, dead, the Sanche make an object lesson out of Uno, showing anyone what happens to people who disobey the Sanche. That kind of a lesson only works if the person is dead, because if he was still alive and then later regains consciousness while still wearing his uniform, Uno's defiance would have the opposite effect on the others, and would just embolden them. So it looks like the point of contention here that leads to Uno's death is not Uno's refusal to swear oaths, as others have suggested, but Uno's refusal to take off his uniform, and as a result Uno is killed. Next we have the short clip of Matt stabbing something or someone with a bladed weapon. The blade at the end of it looks like a flat curved blade, not a spear tip, so even though the descriptive text in the video states that this is a spear, it does not look like one. It looks very much like an Ashandarai, and is probably the same weapon we saw in an earlier photo. Unfortunately, we cannot tell whether it has any carvings, because it moves too quickly. Nevertheless, this is now the second hint that Matt will get his weapon from the Finn in Season 2 before the events in Falme. Next, let's look at a few scenes in which Egwene and Elaine are near a Waygate in the jungle and encounter the Seanchan. The suggestion has been that this is the scene in which Egwene is captured by the Seanchan. I think this is only partially true, and there's actually more going on here. First, it is interesting to note that we seem to be looking at two different scenes here. In the scene on the left, Egwene's hair is loose, falling to her shoulders on both sides. In the scene on the right, she appears to have her hair in a braid. I'll get back to the question of what each scene represents in a moment. Next, let's deal with the question of whether Nynaeve is in the scene, as some have suggested. The argument I've seen is that there are a few individual frames in both scenes which leave the possibility open that there might be another girl in the scenes. Personally, I think this is highly unlikely. In the first scene, the dark pixels we see next to Egwene in a single frame are almost certainly just a shadow or some post-processing artifact. The lower part especially looks more like the regular background, not like legs, and there does not seem to be enough room for Nynaeve's head. In the second scene, there appear to be dark pixels in the back, but none of them look anything close to the kind of dress and cape Nynaeve would be wearing. My guess is that those areas are either shadows or Seanchan soldiers and possibly a horse. They may be blocking or holding the girls, which would explain why the girls don't keep moving forward during the explosions around them. Unfortunately, it is very difficult to be certain what we see there, because the trailers overall contain a lot of visual artifacts that appear to have been introduced during post-processing. Here are two examples. In the scene with Matt slamming down his Ashandarai, the blade appears to be disconnected from the shaft and at a different angle, which obviously can't be real. Also, in the scene with Egwene channeling, the edge of her cloak, which is supposed to be horizontal, as seen in this picture, jumps all over the place, which also cannot be real. Based on this, I don't think it is wise to trust small pixel groups in individual frames, especially not when quick movement or visual effects are present, so there really is not enough information here to suspect that there is a third girl in the scene. There is another reason why I don't think these pixels are Nynaeve. It would be out of character for her to be the first to run away from danger, leaving the other girls behind her, especially now that she's the only accepted in the group, with the other two still being novices. Even before that, Nynaeve's natural instinct has been to try to protect everyone around her, especially Egwene, and if necessary shield them with her own body, as we see in the scene from Season 1. For her to just turn her back and leave the others behind her would be out of character. So we have Egwene and Elaine in two scenes near a jungle Waygate confronting the Seanchan. What's happening here? I don't think any of these two scenes are actually real in-world scenes. The first scene, where Egwene has her hair loose and Elaine appears a bit distracted, is probably from Elaine's accepted test. I already predicted in an earlier video that we would likely get to see Elaine's accepted test in episode 4 or 5, based on a comment made by Rafe in the JordanCon video. The second scene, with both girls heading for the Waygate, is probably a dream sequence, most likely a nightmare of her accepted test that Elaine has later. Here's what I think actually happens, mostly in line with what I predicted earlier. Liandrin tells Egwene that Egwene needs to help Rand or Perrin. Egwene tells Nynaeve or Elaine, who discourage Egwene from going, but ultimately decide to come along and confront Liandrin. Liandrin separates Egwene from the others and escapes with her, but viewers do not find out immediately what happens to Egwene. Nynaeve and Elaine go back to the tower, the hunt for the Black Archer starts, but Elaine first has to pass her accepted test. As part of that test, for the part that represents the present, Elaine is thrown into the real-world scene in which Egwene comes out of the Waygate and is captured by the Seanchan. In Elaine's accepted test, she's in that scene as well, and has to decide whether to help Egwene or to abandon her and complete her test. This is how the audience finds out what actually happens to Egwene, through Elaine's point of view, and this explains why we see both girls in the scene, and why Elaine appears to be a bit distracted. The idea that Elaine sees Egwene being captured during her accepted test would also explain why the writers chose to put that Waygate into a jungle area, because it can lead to a nice misdirect later. Here's how. Elaine's accepted test happens after Egwene has already been taken, so when Elaine starts her test, she's already worried about Egwene and trying to find out what happened to her. Now Elaine sees Egwene in her test, and while Elaine is in that scene, she obviously tries to remember as much as she can from that scene, because everything she sees could be a clue to where Egwene was taken. I expect Elaine to later go back to Siuan and tell Siuan everything she saw. This means a detailed description of the Seanchan and a description of the jungle environment. The description of the Seanchan won't mean anything to Siuan, because nobody in the Westlands has seen the Seanchan in hundreds of years. However, the description of the jungle might mislead Siuan into thinking that Egwene has been taken to Tyr, where Siuan grew up, because Tyr also has a jungle environment. I think this is the reason why the writers used a jungle background for the Waygate, because this way Siuan is being deliberately misled about where Egwene was taken and will have her spy network search in the wrong location. That kind of a mistake by Siuan would make it more believable why Siuan's spy network does not make any progress in finding Egwene. Let's stay with Siuan for a moment. 3 scenes from the teasers and trailers are trying to deceive us into thinking that Siuan travels to Cairhien during the Season 2 timeline. In an earlier video I already commented on the difference in tattoos between the Siuan stepping out of the carriage and the Siuan we see in Season 1. Siuan stepping out of the carriage has fewer tattoos, so that scene must be a flashback going back at least 1 year, possibly longer. As for the other 2 scenes, they are likely dream sequences in dream shards created by Lanfear. A few weeks ago I released a video explaining why I think that Lanfear is masquerading as Siuan here, pulling Rand and Moiraine into separate dream shards in an attempt to separate Rand and Moiraine from each other. Here's how I think the scene with Siuan stepping out of the carriage fits into this. While Moiraine is in Cairhien during Season 2, she dreams of the last time she was in Cairhien. At that time Siuan also came to Cairhien, and Moiraine greeted Siuan as Siuan stepped out of her carriage. That is the scene we saw in the earlier teaser. During the Season 2 events, Lanfear probably spies on Moraine's dreams, and then uses Siuan's appearance as a visual reference to create her dream shards. So bottom line, as I already predicted in the earlier video about Lanfear, my prediction is that Siuan is not traveling to Cairhien during the Season 2 timeline, and that her throne is not portable. Next, let's switch to Rand. We have a few clips with him apparently channeling fire and accidentally setting the roof of a building on fire. This looks very much like the same house in which we earlier saw Min. This means likely Min's home, so this is probably from an early part of the season. Then we see Rand throttling Moiraine. It is not clear where this is happening. My guess is that this is also very early in the season, and probably when he meets Moiraine for the first time this season. In Season 1, Moiraine gave him instructions how to cage the Dark One, and early in Season 1, Rand likely finds out that what he did had the opposite effect, and freed the Forsaken instead. Based on that, Rand probably now wonders if that had been Moraine's intent all along. This means if Moiraine is actually a Dark Friend who used him to deliberately free the Forsaken. That would certainly explain Rand's aggressive behavior here. Finally, we have 2 scenes in which Rand wears the same robe, so they probably happened around the same time. In one of the scenes, he visits Loghain. In the other, he walks along a corridor in a building. It has been suggested that that building looks like a hospital, and in one of the recent interviews, it was mentioned that Rand spent some time in a sanatorium. We don't know if these 2 scenes are related, but it is certainly possible. The location in which he speaks to Loghain looks very much like it is related to the tower, because we see the same stone arch design here that we have previously seen in many tower scenes. If that is the case, then the sanatorium might even be on tower grounds, run by the Yellow Arja, which would explain why Loghain is there. After Siuan's speech in Season 1, I would not expect Siuan to surrender Loghain to any place that is not under Aes Sedai control. Let's move on to Moiraine. We have some interesting pieces of information from a recent interview of Rosamund Pike by TV Line, where Rosamund states the following. Obviously, Moiraine and Siuan's love is forbidden. They've also, as we saw in Season 1, made this alliance whereby Moiraine appears to be banished, and of course they have to adhere to that. The appears to be banished part is interesting because this sounds like she's not really fully exiled, but that there's something else going on here. This seems to be very much in line with my prediction that Moiraine's oath has already dropped off from her, and that technically she can enter the tower at any time. Second, in the same interview, Rosamund also states, well, we come to understand more about Moiraine and Siuan's relationship, where it started. We see the moment that they were charged with finding the Dragon Reborn, and we learn that it was a dual mission. This tells us that we get to see events from New Spring, and specifically the scene in which Moiraine and Siuan were given their mission. That has to be the Guitarra Morosa foretelling scene, which I also predicted would be in Season 2. We also see this clip of Moiraine and Siuan together. The fact that they are both dressed in blue suggests that this is from a point in time after they were raised Aes Sedai, but before Moiraine left on her mission to search for the Dragon Reborn, so it is probably also part of the same set of scenes that narrate Moraine's backstory. One more item about Moiraine. The following exchange occurred in an interview of Daniel Henney by a comic book. The biggest question, obviously, is, Lance's relationship to Moiraine, and how is it tested this season? It's tested in many ways. It's tested like it has not been tested before. They are and have been on this journey together for a very long time, the singular mission, with the same goal in mind, and after we leave them at the end of Season 1, at the Eye of the World, with Ishamael stilling Moiraine, you see that the bond is severely altered, and this puts them into a precarious position. The interesting part here, of course, is that Daniel seems to confirm that Moiraine has been stilled. Theoretically, he may have misspoken, but between the Stilling reference here and Rosamund's earlier hint that Moiraine's exile may just be for appearance, my prediction about Moiraine being in the tower, stilled, at the end of Season 2, is becoming increasingly likely. Next, I'd like to address a prediction I've made regarding the Liandrin chase scene, and a likely extended version of it in Season 2, where we find out that Moiraine has known since the beginning of Season 1 that Liandrin is black. I still believe that we will get such a scene, but I had previously made a mistake in my prediction of how that scene would be integrated into Season 2. I thought it would be another cold open, probably for Episode 1, for symmetry, but that would actually lead to a plot hole, and here's why. If the scene was shown as a cold open, then it would not have any surrounding context, so the only way the audience would be able to understand that Moiraine has found out that Liandrin is black is by Moiraine and Lan talking about this. But that would mean that Lan also knows from that point on. The problem is that Lan later sees Nynaeve talk to Liandrin, and at that point, if not earlier, Lan would likely warn Nynaeve about Liandrin. And of course, if that were to happen, then Nynaeve would know that Liandrin is black in Season 2, and the girls would never fall into Liandrin's trap. So what this means is that Lan cannot know that Liandrin is black during Season 1, only Moiraine knows, and that means the new scene cannot be a cold open, because it needs context. It has to be shown as a flashback from another scene in which Moiraine and Lan talk to each other in the present. This means in the Season 2 timeline. I think the way the writers have integrated the scene into Season 2 looks roughly like this. We have heard from interviews that early in the season Moiraine tries to push Lan away and is rather cruel to him for that reason. At that time, Moiraine could tell Lan that she has known about Liandrin being black for a long time and not told him, implying that she has not trusted him. The real reason why Moiraine did not tell Lan was probably to avoid pulling him into Aes Sedai politics. During that dialogue, we will likely see that new version of a Liandrin chase scene as a flashback. Not having that scene be the cold open for Episode 1 opens up that cold open slot for some other scene. There are now hints that the beginning of the Dark Friends social that was recently added to the end of Season 1, Episode 8 might be that cold open. This is of course not the full Dark Friends social, it is only the beginning of the meeting until the little girl interrupts the meeting and the scene continues outside. We never get to see the actual meeting continue. I think in Season 2 we will get to see more footage from the Dark Friends social, including a discussion of the 5 ta'veren and what to do about them, but that will happen later in the season. The cold open of Episode 1 will only have the beginning of the meeting, possibly presented as a flash forward. We're getting to the end of this video. This is almost certainly the last video I'm releasing before Season 2 drops. I plan to be back with more videos sometime after the season has aired, with a retrospective on predictions, some analysis of the season, and more predictions for Season 3. Thanks everyone for watching, I hope you've had fun, and please join me again for other videos on this channel. Also please like, subscribe and leave comments. The description of this video has links for all source material used in the creation of the video. Thanks again, and that's it for now.